Simon Fell.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome, Ministers. And I apologise for not rushing back as quickly as I could have done. I was trying to save a library by delivering a petition in the Chamber. So,
important constituency work.
Indeed. Thank you. So I've got a few questions around legal migration, Minister Pursglove. So obviously we had the statement from the Home Secretary last week. He said that migration to his country is far too high and it needs to come down. What does success look like for you?
So I think it is fair to say that the package that was set out just prior to my arrival in the department last week is a good package that moves forward in responding to the challenge that people are rightly laying down to us of reducing net migration, doing that in a sustainable manner, while still ensuring that businesses and employers have the skills that they need. The overall package of measures, when you take into account also the announcement that was made in May and the delivery of that announcement around students, is around 300,000 reduction in net migration. That is something that I am determined as the Minister for Legal Migration to see through in conjunction with the Home Secretary, and that is a pressing priority for the department. And I think it should also be, as I touched on a little earlier, seen in the context of the work that is going on in government elsewhere, particularly around the Back to Work plan and all of the employment support that is being provided. We should not be complacent as government. I think businesses and employers should continue to engage and work constructively with us to see what more they can do to meet their skill needs through the domestic population here in the UK. And as government, we are really backing that work. And so for me, getting on and delivering that 300,000 reduction is going to be mission critical. But I also want it to sort of be seen in the context of that other work that's going on, and also making sure that we're working in a joined-up way with other government departments.
Thank you, and I'll come back to you on the skills piece, because that is a crucial part of the package. It's almost as important as the numbers themselves. But the Home Secretary talked about spring as being the date that this would come in. Obviously a key thing for the businesses you referred to, care home providers, or indeed people who are looking forward to getting married in the future. What they need to know is when that date is in spring so they can plan. Can you give us an indication of what that looks like?
So I am endeavouring, along with the Home Secretary, to come forward as quickly as possible in providing that information that you are seeking, to give that certainty.
And how quickly do you think that endeavour will deliver results for us?
I can't get drawn any further than that, but you can be assured that I will come forward at the first possible moment to provide that clarity for you.
We very much look forward to it. Thank you. The impact assessment for the new points-based system for skills workers was published in November 2020. When are we expecting an economic impact assessment of the proposed changes?
So my understanding of that is that, again, when we're in a position to announce the latest set of immigration rules, we will provide that economic impact assessment alongside it.
Okay, so we're looking at that same date.
It's also subject to a number of the measures are subject to the review by the Independent Migration Advisory Committee. So both in terms of the future of the shortage occupation list and the review of the graduate route, they are the government asked for the Migration Advisory Committee to review those, so it will be subject to them also completing their review.
Thank you. And with regards to care workers, so the announcement again from spring around their ability to bring dependents into the UK. Can you talk a bit about the evidential base for that decision?
So what I can say to you is that in relation to around 100,000 care workers, what we saw was 120,000 dependents coming with them. And I think that most people would think, rightly, that that is not a sustainable situation and that that is a very considerable number of dependents who are coming with those care workers. I think that, again, I make no apology for making the point that I think we can do more domestically to try and help support more people into those careers with all the right skills to take on those really important caring roles, I think that we shouldn't be complacent about that. I think we should work on a cross-government basis to try and achieve it. I know that colleagues in the Department of Health and Social Care subscribe to that view as well. And I also want to see people paid properly for that work. And I also think that it's right that we tighten that route to sort of guard against some of the perceived exploitation of it, and to just have this in a better balance, in a better proportion.
You're queuing me up very nicely for my next question, which I appreciate. So the Migration Advisory Committee released its annual report today. It had a helpful reminder in it. We had them in front of this committee about 18 months ago, I think it was. And it had a helpful reminder in it that in their 2021 annual report, they suggested that health and care workers should be added to the shortage occupation list. But that was as part of a suite of 19 recommendations. And I'm just going to quote direct from their annual report. We were clear that immigration could not solve the workforce issues alone. Our main recommendation was to introduce a minimum rate of pay, initially at £1 an hour above national minimum wage for care workers in England, to help tackle the workforce issues faced by the sector in the medium to long term. To date, the government has not responded to or implemented any of those recommendations as part of a social care package. Why not?
So we said that the sort of introduction of care workers through the route was intended to be a short-term measure. I have seen the sort of introductory letter that has gone to the Home Secretary from the Migration Advisory Committee with this report today. You'll appreciate that I haven't yet had the opportunity, I think it's 60 pages long, I've not yet had the opportunity to fully digest the 60 pages that have come in alongside that, not least because I wanted to be at the committee on time this afternoon to engage with all of you. But what I most certainly will be doing is engaging with the Migration Advisory Committee in the weeks and months ahead. I consider that to be an important part of this role, and I think that I am very willing to consider what further steps we can take to build on the work that is already ongoing, that is already in flight, to try and shift the dynamic when it comes to net migration, and again, really thinking hard about how we can work in a joined-up way across government, informed by some of that expertise and insight from the MAC about what more we can do to try and support people domestically to take on these roles and to ensure that we're paying people properly.
And look, I appreciate that, and I'm sure that is with good intention, but I'm not going to directly quote you, but your words from only a few minutes ago were we need to get the balance in the system right. And part of this system is about paying people more, so more people in the UK want to do these jobs. We're not fulfilling that part of the bargain, but yet it looks like we're turning the tap off at the other side of the equation. And I just want to check what the reasoning is why we're making this structural change to such a crucial part of our infrastructure without laying the groundwork beforehand.
So we believe that we can do this in a managed and proportionate way. But Mr. Hobbs, I don't know if you've got any sort of insights around this in terms of the policy formulation that went before.
Only to repeat, as you said, I think what ministers were balancing when they took the decision on this was supporting the sector, and it was a relatively new introduction, the health and social care visa, as the minister said, to deal with short-term challenges. The numbers were significant in terms of the intake for those jobs, and then also the associated dependents, and the proportion of dependents to applicants was distinctly different in terms of other skilled routes, and if you look at the salary level. And so I think the ministers examined a package and sought to balance between the desire to bring down net migration, ensure that communities and infrastructure was there to support those individuals, but also support the sector and the needs of both the health and the social care sector.
Thank you. Okay, if I just move on to skilled workers elsewhere, because I know we're pushing right up against time. I'm very grateful for your tolerance there. So if I use a constituency example, I know you said earlier you don't want to do constituency casework. I'm not going to give you any casework here, but I have the last producer.
I'm always happy to help colleagues with constituency. I wouldn't want people to think I'm not willing to help colleagues with constituency casework. It's always difficult to sort of debate.
There's a letter in the post
specific
already
circumstances in public without having all the background to it.
There's a letter in the post already to you.
Right,
so
well, I will keep an eye out for that.
So I have the last producer of lead crystal in the UK. They are a very, very specialist business. The employees there, or the skills of the employees there, are listed as an endangered craft. It takes 15 years to train a production glass blower and 5 to 7 years to train a glass cutter. We simply do not have these skills in the UK anymore. There are no businesses in the UK to train them other than the one that's in operation, and because there are no qualified assessors, they can't get apprenticeships up and running. So they're in a bind. They have to import people in from overseas, countries like Prague, where they have a skills base like that. But the threshold that's being set is simply not going to work for them. It would mean increasing wages across the business by 30%. This will push them out of business. What would you suggest businesses like that do?
So we will need to take forward these measures carefully and take on board those sorts of observations. What I would say is that I think there are opportunities around skills. I think there are opportunities around automation. I think there are opportunities around productivity that we ought to be fully exploring and trying to take forward in a coordinated way. And I think also, I obviously hear quite a lot of cases for specific professions and for particular types of work. It is worth just remembering that this isn't the only route, and that when you consider that there are Ukrainians, there are dependents, there are people on the EUSS scheme, youth mobility schemes, and individuals who have general work rights, and students can work too, who could take on some of the roles in some of the professions that often we hear about, or particular types of work. But around that very specific example that you've mentioned, I would be really happy to engage with you on it and understand from your sort of constituency perspective your views on that and what those challenges might be.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that, and I'm aware we're running up to time, so I'll leave it there.